Bet horse racing on DRF Bets. We'll match your first deposit of $200. Get free expert picks and past performances, plus weekly cash back. All from Daily Racing Form, the most trusted name in horse racing.
Dan Illman, Mike Beer, kicking off a pick 5 at Keeneland on Breeders' Cup Saturday, and we start things off with the sprint. Race number 7, 3/4 of a mile, $2 million is the purse. Let's take a look at this field. Jackie's Warrior looking for redemption. He's going to be a big favorite in this race. He was a big favorite in last year's Breeders' Cup Sprint, and he got beat. He was a big favorite in his most recent start, the 4 ago, and he got beat. He's the most naturally talented horse in this race. He's the speed of this race, but he's starting to get a little bit of a reputation, a very tiny reputation that he can be had.
Yeah, that's true, I guess. Listen, all those things being said, he's so much the horse to beat in here that it's not even funny. I guess all in all, it was a disappointing loss most recently in the 4 ago. He still ran pretty well in that race.
He certainly did. He had to take pace pressure from Pipeline, and it took a deep closer to run him down. According to the Timeform US pace projector, Jackie's Warrior, very fleet of foot, is expected to make the lead. Super Ocho, who's going to be a big price, could provide a little bit of pace pressure. He brings some of that Southern California speed.
We'll see if he's really fast enough to keep up with Jackie's Warrior. I'd be surprised.
Manny Wah just won a recent prep race at Keeneland. It was the Grade 2 Phoenix, and he did it for Wayne Catalano, who won this race last year with Aloha West, who we'll talk about in a little bit. Let's watch Manny Wah. This is his style. He is a one-run closer. He got some pace in this race, and he pulled off the upset. They should be going in the Breeders' Cup Sprint, you would think, but he's going to be facing tougher competition.
Yeah, I mean, if nothing else, it's nice to see him, get the job done here. He's going to dive down to the inside here, get through, and then just get up. This is his first win on dirt since he took an allowance race back in 2019, Dan. It's been a long time. He finally got the job done. He's got to improve again.
One of the more intriguing faces in this race is the number 2, Kamari. She would have been the favorite in the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint. Trainer Wesley Ward decides to try on the boys, going 3/4 of a mile. She's won her last 2. She's won going at Keeneland in the past. And here's her performance in the Gallant Bloom against fellow fillies and mares, her most recent start, where she shot a very nice trip, tracking the pace on the outside. Lady Rocket and Aqueduct Lover has a good 2-length advantage on her coming down to the 3/16 pole, but Kamari shows off her class late.
Yeah, this is an easy win for Kamari, easily running by this horse in the late stages in really good form. Her last 2 starts are both really, really good. But for the second year in a row, Dan, they're doing something a little odd come Breeders' Cup Day. Last year, they ran her in the turf sprint off of a layoff. This year, they're going to run her against the boys. I don't know. I feel like they probably should have ran her in the filly race.
Thoughts on her tactics? She, on paper, is a horse that can be placed, it seems, wherever. The last race, the Gallant Bloom, she was sitting off a pretty slow pace. They got to be going faster here. Is there a concern that she could be out-sprinted a bit early here?
Yeah, they're going to go a lot faster in this race, and I do think that's a concern. Can she deal with a fast pace? Yeah, I think she can deal with it, Dan. And she's a really nice horse. I'm a big fan of hers. I just don't really like her that much in this race, especially at 4-1.
Obesos is up next, the number 3, coming off a 3rd-level allowance win. It was the first race off a pretty hefty layoff, and Obesos, as the favorite, did some work to win. I really think that it probably tightened him up good. He needed the fitness. He got it in that race. Now he's really being thrown to the wolves, but he's compiled a pretty solid record. He's a bit underrated.
Yeah, I agree with that, especially sprinting. They spent a little time early in his career, trying to make him a route horse, and he ran fine in some of those longer distance races. I like him going shorter. They finally cut him back to sprint in his last 2. He's run well in both of those races. This is still a really tough spot for this horse, but I'm a big fan.
Talk about underrated. The 4 American Theorem never gets any press, and it seems like he's in excellent form. He was a Grade 1 placed runner way back as a 2-year-old in 2019. He won the Bing Crosby at 6 furlongs 2 back, and he ran just fine in the Pat O'Brien going 7/8 of a mile. You're going to see he has to go to the outside. Well, the winner of this race, Laurel River, sort of tucked in between horses in the two path and got the split. American Theorem is running hard for second, earned a respectable Buyer speed figure, and Laurel River is going to be a handful in the dirt mile earlier on the card.
Yeah, agreed. This horse ran well in here. He got forced wide there coming to the stretch. He's just no match for a really good winner, but he runs a good second in there. His grade 1 win 2 starts back. That was a really strong performance, going 6 furlongs, ranged up to that field wide on the turn, and just ran right by them through the stretch. I think he's a dangerous horse in here.
And if there is a very hot pace, you know this horse is going to be coming. They should be cooking anyway. Jackie's Warrior's no slowpoke. Aloha West, I'm kind of rooting for Mike a little bit. He got up in the shadow of the wire to win last year's Breeders' Cup Sprint, upsetting Jackie's Warrior. Then off the long layoff, he caught Jackie's Warrior at Churchill Downs. He didn't run badly. He was a lot closer to the pace than usual in that race. The Met Mile, he caught a horse named Flightline. You can give him that. And then his most recent start, the Kelly's Landing, he got it done. This is a tough ask off of a long layoff. We know he's good enough to do it, but we haven't seen him since July.
Yeah, the layoff's the major concern for me, because even though he's only managed 3 starts this year and only 1 win, I actually feel like he was in good form earlier this year. In both of the starts, forget about the Met Mile where he was never going to beat Flightline anyway. In the other 2 starts, they really had to take him out of his game a little bit to stay closer to the pace. They're not going to have to do that here, Dan. They're going to sit and make 1 run.
He is an extremely talented horse, and he hasn't run 6 furlongs since last year's Breeders' Cup Sprint. This is his distance. Elite Power is kind of the now horse in the division based on his victory in his first start against stakes competition. This is the grade 2 Vosburg going 7 furlongs at Aqueduct last time out. It wasn't the strongest edition of the Vosburg. Elite Power, as you see, is just sitting right off of the pace, and he sprints on home to win with a 101 Buyer speed figure. But it's now 4 consecutive wins for the Bill Mott trained Elite Power, and he's done it at 6.
Yeah, I mean, this is a super weak Vosburg. They did just sort of put this horse right up close to the pace, which hadn't been his style leading up to this, but you can see how easily he wins, Dan. He has a lot of upside still. I don't think we've seen this horse's best race. I like every one of his starts since he began this winning streak back over the summer. And I think he could take another step forward here. I wonder what kind of price he's going to be, though. I don't know if I would take the 6-1 morning line. But I do think that this is a horse that I think you have to take pretty seriously in here.
It's been an interesting journey, to say the least, to the Breeders' Cup for the 7 Super Ocho, who began his career in his native Chile, made his North American debut at Mountaineer Park, of all places, and is now coming into this race off a solid 3rd-place effort in the Santa Anita Sprint Championship. He does have good speed. The problem is, showing speed in this race, you got to push Jackie's Warrior. And if you somehow get the better of Jackie's Warrior, well, here comes the closers. And if you don't get the better of Jackie's Warrior, you're getting hot and dirty.
Exactly. I'll be very surprised if he gets the best of Jackie's Warrior in here, and then I'll be even more surprised if he somehow manages to hold on.
Really root for horses like the HCZ Rocket. He's 8 years old. He's a millionaire. The last time they ran the Breeders' Cup Sprint at Keeneland was 2020. He ran a fine second in that race, and rumors of his demise have been greatly exaggerated. His last race was pretty good. Let's watch the Santa Anita Sprint Championship. Super Ocho is part of this pace. He's going to run 3rd. CZ Rocket doesn't have the tactical speed that he used to have. He's a closer. The rail opened up. He did get the trip, but he's running.
Yeah, he does take a little bit of a step forward here. This trip really works out, though. A closer's trip right up the inside in here. He's actually got a shot to win it, Dan, and he's just going to miss at the end. Still a cool horse. I don't think he's a horse that you would look at and say he's in totally over his head here, but I do feel like this is a really tough ask for him.
And here's the horse to catch and beat, the 9 Jackie's Warrior, the beaten favorite in this race. Last year, he has earned triple-digit Buyer speed figures in 8 of 17 starts, and he had to work on the lead here in the 4 go at 1-9. Pipeline, who we'll see in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile earlier on the card, sort of forced Jackie's Warrior's hand. Jackie's Warrior will get the best of Pipeline, and a very good horse. Cody's Wish runs him down in the stretch. Jackie's Warrior won the duel, lost the war. I know he was disappointing to lose at 1-9, but he still earned a giant 109 Buyer.
Yeah, he still ran well. And I guess more than anything else, Dan, what you pointed out there with him, just sort of taking pressure on the lead was probably what worked against him most, because his prior 3 starts were all races where basically they were public workouts. He didn't really have to get down to serious business in any of them. And I wonder if that just sort of cost him at the end of the 4 go there. You could see him get a little bit tired. He still ran really well. He's way the horse to beat in here.
Willie Boy is the 10 for Chantal Sutherland. Jorge Delgado, graded stakes winner of the Smile Sprint. 2 starts back. No match for Jackie's Warrior last time out in the Vanderbilt. Coming into this race off a bit of a freshening.
Yeah, I mean, listen, he ran fine in the Vanderbilt last time, but not, he was just no match for Jackie's Warrior. And his prior 3 starts were all good. They weren't good enough to make him beat this field, I don't think.
Flash of Mischief, the number 11, is 30-1 on the morning line, and on paper he only has 1 race that could contend with the likes of Jackie's Warrior. The good news is that race came last time out when they cut him all the way back to 6 furlongs at Remington Park. Let's watch Flash of Mischief, who stalked in between horses, got to the outside, and blew them away. He has done some good work sprinting in his career. They've tried to run him middle distances, longer distances. He's always been okay. Maybe he's found his niche as sort of a late-running sprinter. The runner-up in this race ran okay in the Breeders' Cup Sprint a couple of years ago.
Yeah, that's true. He did look good winning this race, and it obviously came back with a very fast figure. It'll be interesting to see if he can back it up here off of a huge step up in class. I'm a fan of this horse. I think he's good going longer. I think he's good going shorter. I think this is a really tough spot for him.
Top pick time for the Breeders' Cup Sprint. Mike, you're going to go with a little bit of an upset. American Theorem is in very sharp form. He's kept excellent company in Southern California. He's going to be running late and put the fear in Jackie's Warrior.
Yeah, I'm hoping that he can just work out a little bit of a trip here. He's got his work cut out for him, Dan. Jackie's Warrior is way the horse to beat in this race. But I've been waiting for American Theorem to turn back. They finally turned him back. He's won 2 graded stakes races since they did that, and he ran really well last time. I'm going to give him a little bit of a chance here.
I think the sprint division this year is Jackie's Warriors for the taking. I think he's going to get to the front, dissuade Super Ocho. And if he can open up at just the right time, he can hold off the closers. Maybe we can get a price along the likes of a Flash of Mischief coming off that big buyer last time out to spice up the exotics. But Mike's going with American Theorem, an interesting under-the-radar horse in the sprint. 4.965 for Mike, 9.1126 for me. We'll see if Jackie's Warrior can make amends in the Breeders' Cup Sprint.